episode 367.
I'm not fearful at all that this industry is going anywhere but up, up, and up. You know, we look at the average age of a car, 12, 13 years old. That means in 12 or 13 years, I'm going to be working on a 2018. There's nothing fearful about that whatsoever.
Welcome, aftermarketers, to Remarkable Results Radio. Listen to learn just one thing from today's episode on your journey to remarkable results. Hi, Carm Capriato here, and welcome to Remarkable Results Radio with Mike Tatich, president of Tatich's TMT Automotive, Bremen, Indiana, and also a John Maxwell Leadership Certified Coach. Hey, did you know that Federal Mogul Motor Parts' Garage Gurus supports the podcast? Hey, are you looking for a hands-on, real-world technical training experience? Garage Gurus offers on-site training in major markets across the country, providing the equipment, tools, and know-how needed to help keep your next job on track. Find out more at fmgaragegurus.com. Hey, listen, I'm very proud to provide our aftermarketers the content necessary to uplift, upgrade, and adapt to our automotive aftermarket industry. Our resources provide content for your advancement and development. I've added a book section on our website to bolster your personal development and growth. As my friend Barry Barrett says, leaders are readers. Check out the brand new webpage and see all the books we've discussed on the podcast. Find it on the menu bar on your favorite web browser at remarkableresults.biz/books. Hey, are you in touch with our Remarkable community? Well, get inside our ecosystem at remarkableresults.biz/social. And a shout out to new Facebook friends, Jim Harvin, Tad Butita, and Ken Bornstein, and new LinkedIn connections, Tony Sanchez and John Constantin. Now meet shop owner Mike Tatich, who made a huge commitment to become a better leader. Mike has recently become a John Maxwell Certified Business Coach. I've known Mike and his son Tony, and I've had a one-on-one interview with son Tony in episode 231, and also in a Shop Talk Roundtable with millennial shop owners in episode 360. This is Mike and I's first one-on-one, and we had a very candid talk about the industry and the leadership values that make for outstanding organizations. Now, he says that 9 out of 10 shop owners don't believe they can take the shop forward because of their self-limiting belief that adds to being fearful of making big moves. He had to learn the art of letting go. Since Mike's son Tony is a millennial, he has some great advice about engaging that generation to take over our businesses, and he talks about so much more. Find the show's talking points for Mike Tatich at remarkableresults.biz/E367. So glad you've joined us to improve your own success pathway using the power of the spoken word. Enjoy. A warm welcome to Mike Tatich from TMT Complete Auto Center in Bremen, Indiana. Hey, Mike.
How you doing today, Carm?
I'm great, man. 35th year in business or thereabouts, maybe. Is it 37? Where are we now?
Yeah, working in the 35th year. Yes, sir.
Wow, 35th year. And you were just a very young man when you started.
Yeah, my wife and I got married and started our business within a couple months of each other at 22 years old and 19 years old, respectively.
And you knew everything. You knew exactly.
Oh, God, yeah. I knew it. I didn't even need to go to college. I knew so much.
I love it. It's so great. There's a point in time right now in your life where you can actually say that. But back when you were 20 or 21, you were probably unwilling to accept a whole bunch of advice.
No question. And my dad, unfortunately, passed away when I was pretty young, and I didn't have a lot of mentors when I was young, which is a mistake. But I'll tell you a quick story about one I did have. And he would always, it was a grandfather of one of my best friends growing up, and he would come in and mentor me, and I would point every finger at every customer and employee and stuff and all these problems. My office was right next to the bathroom, and he gets up, and he was one of the guys that used to look up over his top of his glasses and about burn a hole through you. And he said, "Get up." And he marched me around and flipped the light on in the bathroom, and he stood me in front of that mirror. And he said, "Until you realize that son of a blank is the root of all your problems and going to be the only way you're going to be successful, you're not ever going to amount to anything." And he walked out the door. That happened to me about 24 years old, probably. And it took me about a week to call him back because I was mad at first, but I realized that I was the root of my evil, and I was the only person that was going to drive the success.
Some 30 years later, now you're recalling that. What an impression.
Yeah. Oh, huge. It was a huge impression. And it was something that I didn't like at the time. And it was probably the best dose of medicine that I had.
Mike, you're here for a lot of reasons. First of all, you run a successful shop. We've had your son, Tony, on before. Would love to talk a little bit here about Tony and his integration into the company. But you became a John Maxwell Certified Business Coach. And I am so impressed with that movement, because there's no one in our industry, I don't believe, at your level of your area of expertise as a shop owner that now wants to go out and say, hey, leadership is it, guys.
It's been life-changing for me. And I'll tell you, several other shop owners got me hooked up with reading Maxwell, probably 10 years ago. And I started reading probably 5 Levels of Leadership was one of the first ones. And it really hit home with me. We'll talk about that maybe in a little bit. But so I started going through that. And then the certification thing came up. And, the number one thing I thought last year when I decided to join that was, John Maxwell is in his mid-70s. I wanted to experience that live before that wasn't anymore. And I went through the certification program. It pretty much for me took from January of this year through August. I went to the certification program, tens and hundreds of hours of studying and training and listening to different things. And I probably scratched 2% of the surface. But I went to that certification program in Orlando, Florida in August. And I tell you, what a feeling of that, the power of this network of these 20,000 people worldwide in 100 and some countries that are John Maxwell certified trainers and stuff. It's huge. But the biggest thing that really hit home with me, and I met all sorts of people from ministers to business people to school administration people. I didn't meet one person in the automotive business. None. And that's why I'm here.
And I'm so excited about it. And thank you for bringing your passion about leadership to the podcast. And I would love to do a couple of parts, I don't care how long it takes, to really develop a very strong leadership series here with you. So I'm tossing that out as a possibility.
Well, and the good Maxwell quote of that is everything falls on leadership, always has, always will. And we miss that a lot. I missed that for most of my career in that. And man, if we could help share that with others in our automotive business, I'd certainly love to do that.
Well, people that are serious followers of the podcast have heard me talk about Maxwell, and it was in 1998. And I had a life-changing thing going on, and I was faced with being a much bigger, better, stronger leader than I ever was. And I was curious as to how I was going to handle all the responsibilities. So I went to the bookstore, and I went into this leadership section, and I'm flipping through books. It was fate that I bumped into Developing the Leader Within You from John Maxwell. Of course, in the, I think, first paragraph of the first chapter, it says leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And that really shocked me. I actually put the book down and I started to think about what that means. And then I devoured the book, and then I devoured developing the leader in others, and then 21 Irrefutable Laws. And I just kept going on and on and on, and failing forward. And 360-degree leadership and all of that stuff. And it wasn't, because if you're in middle management, you have to report upstairs, you have reports that come up to you. So anyway, I'm a big fan of Maxwell. I've got 5 or 6 books of Maxwell on my books page on the website. So if anyone wants to be inspired, just go to the website, click on the books, and add to your collection. And as Barry Barrett, my friend, says, leaders are readers, and it really changed your life too, right, Mike?
Oh, definitely. And I'll be honest, for you shop owners or shop people, whatever, I did not spend much time reading books. I read the trade magazine. I read things that had to do with fixing automobiles, but I didn't read things that were going to make me a better leader, a better businessman, and the leadership is needed within our businesses, but it's needed within my family. It's needed within my, other organizations that I belong to. That there's so many things that I missed with that is been extremely helpful to me. Let's say that.
I'm talking with Mike Zralek, a technical product specialist with Federal Mogul Motor Parts. So you have this van, and it's the Guru on the Go van, and it's all nicely decked out, and you drop by for lunches and learns. How do shops get a chance to get that van to come to their place?
Well, they can, of course, call into our Guru hotline and request it. They can talk to their parts distributor, and through that channel, we can go out and do some training, or even with us out in the field. If they see us, we do various warehouse distributor type shows, many different events. We're out there everywhere. Just come by and ask, and we'll be more than happy to come by.
Hey, Mike, if I said you were a champion for Federal Mogul Motor Parts, would I be right?
You betcha.
So give me an example.
I live, eat, breathe Federal Mogul on a daily basis. Growing up, being in the racing industry, I knew a lot about Moog. I loved Moog. Felpro, same thing. To go out and be able to talk about a company this big, this strong, it makes me happy every single day. I'm so excited to do it on a day in and day out basis.
What are technicians saying after you're done with your presentation?
When can you come back? They want more day in and day out.
They want more, and you have more to give. You've got so many key product lines in the industry.
Oh, we have a ton of product lines and a ton of training that's available, with those product lines and on a technical side too.
How dazzled are the techs to see that compression-loaded ball joint with the pre-installed integral dust boot?
They come unglued. They are so excited about that because less frustrations. They've been dealing with issues in the field of damaging that boot during installation, and it makes it so much easier to put in. And it's a beautiful piece.
Federal Mogul Motor Parts' Garage Gurus is your go-to source for the vehicle training, technology, and answers you need to keep your next job on track. On-site, online, or on demand, the Gurus are here to help keep your business and your career on the road to success. Visit fmgarageguru.com. The new frontier of running great service professional shops today is leadership.
Yeah, unequivocally, because people expect a good brake job. And that's the norm. They expect a good meal at the restaurant. It's the leadership and the experience that you have at a restaurant or at our service centers that makes all the difference in the world. And again, we come from this mechanic background that says, man, if I just tune up a car good enough, that's good enough. And that's not anymore. That's not what today's modern shop is. And for us to evolve and be what we need to be in this type of business, it has to change a lot. And again, it goes back to leadership.
When we were talking the other day, you said 9 out of 10 shops don't believe they can take their shop forward.
I truly believe that. And it's just self-limiting belief is what it really comes down to. We get into these things. We get these things built into our head, and they're drilled into us from a kid. For example, early bird gets the worm. The best comes to those who wait. What is it? Do I got to get up early and get the worm, or do I have to wait? I mean, but those are things that goes through, and it's teachings that get embedded in our brain, and it's like you'll never amount to
anything.
Yeah. A kid. What do they tell a kid? They tell a kid, follow the leader.
Right.
I don't want my kids following my grandchildren now following a leader. I want them to be the leader. That's the difference with that. But it's those mindset, and it goes back to one of the guys at Maxwell did a piece on that, and he said, "I live at somewhere in Pittsburgh," and give the address. Did you grow up there? And everybody says, "Well, no, of course not." But he goes through all those things. He said, "You must have, because you believe the same things I do, because those are the things that were drilled into us from our parents and grandparents and society and everything else."
Is leadership going to be a real important element in business coaching today? Is there enough concentration on it?
I personally don't think there's enough concentration on it in our industry whatsoever. We have great people that have great organizations within our industry, and they're trying to fix a lot of different things in our shops, from service advisors to, KPIs and all the great things we talk about. But leadership is one piece that I just don't think is talked about a whole lot in our business, and I think it's a big missing link. So that's one thing that really drove me to the Maxwell training, was to bring it into the coaching that I do, not only within my service center, but in my businesses, but also with the other people that I coach, and to just try to open that door and let people really realize how they can take this type of leadership training and really make a difference in their lives.
So is there enough delegation and vision going on with the leaders in our industry?
I'll leave that up to their personal interest, whoever does that. I mean, I'll go back to, I just don't think leadership is talked about near as much. Again, we talk about so many different things, and for me, in my shop, I sent technicians always to every class that came around, whether it was a NAPA or Snap-on or whatever. I always did that. Didn't spend much time with service advising. Now, in the last 10 years, service advising has become pretty hot, where we have a lot of people teaching service advising and stuff. But then the leadership side, I think, is the next frontier that has not been touched in our industry.
Got it. No doubt that service advisors need to be great leaders.
100%. I talked in my service advising. I think a service advisor in a shop is an air traffic controller. They got stuff coming in from the front, from the customers, going out to the back to the technicians. They're landing planes. Planes are taking off. Parts guys are delivering. They've got all this stuff going on. And man, if you don't think your service advisor or your service manager, whatever you want to term him or her, needs leadership, think of how many confrontations you have between a service advisor and technician. That can be solved with leadership.
Such a great point. Wow, I love it. You were a typical dad who wanted to keep those airplane controls firmly in your hands. Am I right?
Oh, 100%.
We need to do an entire show on letting go, don't we?
And very much so. It's very difficult. I mean, and if I talk to some of the shop owners that have been in there 30 plus years, like I have, you built this baby. I mean, we have 3 wonderful children. And this automotive business was child number 1, really, because it came ahead of the 3 children. And we have to do some separation of that. But I'll tell a quick story of that. The reason that it really hit home with me, I was sitting in a banking meeting some years back, and I was telling him how great my shop was and all the things I was going to do. And he says, that's all well and good. But he said, what happens if Mike Tatich gets hit by a Mack truck? And I thought, man, what happens with that? And I went home and it really sunk in. It took me a couple days. I think that meeting was on a Friday, and I kind of thought about it. And I thought, I have built this whole thing to run through me, with me. When I went on vacation, it went to crap. I mean, everybody, I'm sure people can always tell these stories. And I did that to myself. So those years I started, and that was well before my son was really involved. He had worked, was just kind of getting back into the business after college. And I started building a team and then I got into the leadership books and putting these places together. And it made such a difference. But letting go, very difficult.
When I met Tony, your son, for the first time, it was at Vision 2 years ago. And he stopped by to say hello into my studio, and I recognized him as a young man in the industry. And I was really concentrating very heavily on interviewing millennials. And we just started to talk, and I recognized that he was an SOB, a son of boss. And he and almost that was his attitude, and he wanted more, and he wanted to break out, and I could sense this. And I said, if you're willing to be transparent, come on the show. So of course Tony did come on the show, and he did a wonderful episode. I think it's in the 130s. I can't quite remember, but just go to the website, type in Tony Tatich, Tatich, and you'll find his episode. And I have to tell you, and then I met you, and then, and you were on the show. You did some Breaks for Breast stuff with us a while back, which was great. And then, of course, the Maxwell thing. You went through an incredible transformation because you realized second gen had to have a place to go.
Very much so. And again, we do have 3 children. Only one really had a yearning to be in the automotive business. I tried to push him in every direction other than that. But it's meant to be. Those are somebody else's plans, not mine. But it made me really think. And I have a lot of shop owners that say, man, I wish I had a son that would take over my business. And my caution to that is every time you mix family in this business thing, it's a whole different concoction. It's a whole different recipe. It's a whole different result. And sometimes dinner's burnt, and sometimes it tastes pretty good. So it's I tell you, it's taken a lot of learning on my part, because if you can sit here and say that I can manage and coach a son the same as I would another employee, I'd have to call you a liar. It's just a totally different dynamic. As I told you, losing my dad when I was pretty young, it was very important to me to have a great relationship with my children. And sometimes that is a little stressful in this, but to be able to mentor. So one of the things I did, and that's why, Carm, you've met Tony and others have, is I'd really try to expose them to the industry pretty young. I go to a lot of meetings that have a lot of older shop owners, and I don't see the second gens that are back working in the shop. Man, you got to take the time to get them out of the shop and get them exposed to other people.
Hey, there's some great advice from Mike. Please reach out and involve your children and get out of their way, right, Mike?
Yes, and that's a difficult thing too, is to get out of their way. We've gone through a process year after year to get that, and as of January 1st of this year, Tony and I are full-fledged business partners. He's buying out 49% of the shop, and I've turned over day-to-day operations to him. And I didn't have that mentor, that guidance early, so I want to be that person that helps coach and guide and love, and there are still some head-butting times and stuff, because there are different ways to do it. We both want to get to the end result, and hopefully both of our ways get us that way. There's a lot of similarities, but he obviously wants to do it in a different way. And I like, one of the best sayings I liked is this: if you're a first gen dad or mom or whatever out there, as my ceiling ought to be his floor. I want him to take what we've built upon and do amazing things with it. And that's really, really our goal.
Are you bringing your influence on Maxwell to him? Have you said, listen, Tony, here's the plan. You're going to do this, go to this meeting, tell me what you learned, read this book, let me coach you here. I mean, do you have a well thought out plan?
Yeah, we've had a good plan with that. We've worked through the dynamics of, how a buyout's constructed and how we put those things together, how the management is done. One of the problems that we had a couple of years ago is we had 2 management styles within an organization in a small company, and it created a little confusion because Mike tells me one thing, Tony tells me another. So we had to now my management is all through Tony, not around Tony. Again, I talk about George Steinbrenner, the owner of the Yankees. George Steinbrenner was a minority owner of the Yankees, but he was the managing partner. Tony is the managing partner of TMT Automotive as we expand for what we do. So we're still behind the scenes, but with our team, there's got to be a unity and a one leader only, and that is Tony. As far as the Maxwell and some of those things, we both got exposed to that by being at meetings. So there's things that he picked up from other shop owners. You parents out there, you could tell I'll tell a little joke with this. You could tell your kid the same thing 5 times, never sinks through. Carm goes and tells them something, and it's the gospel. It's like, I've been telling you that same thing for 3 years. So getting him around other people, and there's great industry people that have helped my son. And I tease him, but it's the God's honest truth. He's got 5 of the best people in the industry on speed dial. I didn't have that. So those are good things.
Mike, that is so true. Here's a great story to back that up. Years ago, I was frustrated about trying to get a message through to my team, okay? And I kept saying, I'm saying this over and over again, but it's not sinking in. Well, someone told me the story. Find a friend that you trust, give them your same meeting outline, and have them come in from a different city. Actually, have them walk in with a briefcase, get in front of the room, and give your same story speech, your same outline, your same process, your same program. And it'll probably sink in because it's not you telling them. And that was way before I read Maxwell. I was so frustrated in trying to get the point across. But so perfect. I mean, thank you for saying that. By the way, your son did come on most recently, and I'm doing a series called Shop Talk. And I had 3 shop owners on. Mike was one of them from the millennial shop owners. And he did a great job. In fact, what I noticed, and Mike, I'm saying this for the first time, from the original interview that I did with him, single one-on-one, right after Vision, to the one we just did just a bit ago, an incredible change. You could just hear it in his voice. You could hear it in the things he said about where he has grown as a leader.
Yeah, it definitely has, and I'll tell you, I come from I have high expectations and high thoughts that he can really grow and be something in there. So mediocrity is not a word that gets talked about in our service center, whether it's how we operate our service center, is how we grow as shop owners. And I thank you for pointing that out with him. And that's being around, being able to speak at several events. He just most recently spoke at a service advisor training that we had just a couple weeks ago, and is continues to hone his skills and stuff. And man, you got to continue to sharpen the axe. And he's done a good job with that.
You're obviously pushing him. Maybe he doesn't even realize it to get it to bring his passion to the public. And wow. If you're out there, Tony, and you're listening, I'm excited for you.
Well, and if you think about this, if you just really scale this industry down, other than probably the medical field, who touches more lives than us in the independent automotive service repair business? Every morning that family gets up and goes to work, goes to school, goes to church, whatever, they're relying on mass on our transportation, because we don't have mass transportation really in most parts of the United States. We're such a needed commodity, and we touch so many lives. And I think we fail to realize that, how important part. If you think of one time that you have a car breakdown, and I'm in the business, I don't want to have a car breakdown. And you think of what that does to somebody's life. We have such a big footprint on people's lives, and I don't think we think about that sometimes.
The older you get, you were telling me just the other day, you get more fearful. And if that's the case, and the average shop owner, how old is the average shop owner in our industry?
Last I heard, about 63.
That puts people up at 80 and up at 40? Is it possible?
They claim one of the trade magazines did it. I think the average age was 63 years old of a shop owner in today's day and age. And that's going to change. I mean, there's a lot of shops that are going to, in my opinion, are going to go by the wayside because they haven't made the changes. They haven't moved up and stuff, which is going to open up a lot for shop owners that do put the effort in. And, I've been to a couple recent conventions, and there's a ton of young guys in this business that are hard chargers, and we're in great hands with that. So I tell you, as one of the older guys in the business, I look with jealousy at those young guys, and including my son, and the opportunity they have ahead of us. I'm not fearful at all that this industry is going anywhere but up, and up. We look at the average age of a car, 12, 13 years old. That means in 12 or 13 years, I'm going to be working on a 2018. There's nothing fearful about that whatsoever. I'm excited for our industry.
It really is. We're in a great, we could be in the golden age of our industry if we pay attention, if we go out and embrace, open our arms to learn new things, to run a better business, to be a better leader. You just said something important. You're jealous of the young people that are out there. And I'm glad to hear that. And so I'm a young person listening. I could be a guy who just started my shop. I was a great technician. I want to run a shop. And you know the struggles and the pains that people will go through for many years. So some advice for the young people that you're jealous of.
Well, I told you my start at 22 years old. Let's further that. 22 years old, rented a building, had $500 of cash and borrowed $2,500, and it was not a shop before. It was an empty building. And I had no fear then because I had nothing to lose. So as you get older, you get fear because you start accumulating things. You don't want to lose whatever. I didn't have anything to lose. So it was well worth the challenge. My point of this is this, and another John Maxwell thing, is nothing beats the compound effect of consistency. And I've run a consistent race. One shop, one marriage, 3 wonderful children. So we've been, and believe me, there was some bumps in the road. There was a couple earthquakes in the middle there, of business. And we weathered the storm through those, but the compound effect of consistency is what's going to get you to where you need to be and stuff. And I think probably if I could give any advice to millennials is, slow it down a little bit, really build the foundation really strong, because we talk about that a lot in a lot of our service advising is building that strong foundation first and then start to grow and accelerate this thing. Too many times maybe we want, and I did too. I wanted to capture the world at 22 years old, and it takes time and it takes effort. So. Foundation,
Mike. What do you really mean? I mean, the team, the customer base, relationships. Describe foundation.
Well, you think of the way that you and I used to get education, Carm, and that was that big thing called encyclopedias in the room and stuff. And now we have, I know this is not videoed, but we all have these, laptops and iPads and phones. We have all this information at our fingertips. So I talked to a guy the other day, one of the guys that I coach, and he was talking about buying stocks. And I gave him the best stock tip ever. And his name was Don. And he had some good things. And I told him, let's invest in the best stock you can ever invest in. And that was DONINC, Don Inc. If invest in yourself, and that's John Maxwell, that's training, that's getting out to the ratchet and wrenches, that's being in a good automotive group that can help you grow. Getting with other shop owners. There's not a day goes by that I don't probably speak or text with 3, 4, or 5 different shop owners. I spent 30 minutes, 45 minutes on the phone last night with a shop owner. And that network is what is growing me. The years that I spent isolated in my little northern Indiana town were the least growth years that we had. And this, conversely, getting with this great network of people. And there's wonderful people in our industry that can really help you accelerate your growth. But be open. The old, be the sponge, not the rock. Sponge soaks it in, rock, it flows over the top.
Don't do it alone. Period. I mean, what you're saying, we've talked about this ad nauseum on the podcast. Networking. If it's not a 20 group, if it's not a local business group, if it's not an association, if it's not a conference, you got to get out. Don't stay inside the building. Get out.
Very much so. And so many, if you shop owners that are out there listening or service advisors have come to the technician side, that is a little bit of an isolated world. That's you and this automobile underneath the hood, whatever it is. And it's getting outside of that and really networking and not being afraid to go say, hey, this part of my business sucks right now, and I really need help with this. I mean, that was part of my first battle was you go to these meetings and everybody's telling her this. Now Facebook groups are telling all the wonderful things that are happening in your shop, and you're sitting back there thinking, well, things aren't very good for me right now. And boy, you got to be able to lay the cards on the table. And once you do that, I mean, the outpouring of offerings and help, there's a ton of people that will give you anything you need to help you be successful.
Be transparent, I think you just said.
Transparent is a big side of it. And we don't want to air our dirty laundry. We're embarrassed that this other shop's doing $2 million a year and we're doing $300,000 or whatever your number is. It doesn't really matter. I look at it as playing golf. You don't play golf against somebody else. You play to be better than you were last week. And that's the way we should look at our shops. Try to be better than you were yesterday. John Maxwell had a thing on his desk for years. He said, yesterday ended last night. It's like, drop it, forget it. It's yesterday. We use the saying all the time. The front windshield of a car is large. The rear window is much smaller. That's because you're supposed to be looking forward, not backward.
Great. Move on. Great advice. It's tough for people to change, Mike. Almost the same old is comfortable for them. Any advice on change?
It is. It's, whether that's that comfy pair of weekend sweatpants or whatever you're wearing, or that lazy boy or whatever you have. But the old saying truly rings true: is success lies just outside of your comfort zone, and the growth happens there. We weren't put on this earth to just be average and mediocre. That was a lot of things in the John Maxwell thing, is to really stretch that thing. Being average is a lazy man's cop-out. It takes guts to make a stand in life. Why are you taking up space with no purpose? You're taking a trip through life, but you're never paying the fare. You think of all those things, and that's all. It's all the difference in our growth and stuff. If you would have told me 10, 15 years ago that we would have accelerated our shop to where we were at, I would say it's not possible. And the only reason it is possible is because I got outside my comfort zone. And it's scary. It's not easy.
That's a huge statement. Do you remember the day you stepped over that line?
I went to my first, 20 group or whatever you want to call it. And I went to a meeting in Chicago. I remember I went on a Sunday. We were open 6 days a week. For me, Chicago was about 3 hours away. And to get to where the meeting was, you had to drive through the, traffic side of Chicago. It was an all-day event. And I told my wife I was going there. And I actually took one guy that worked in my shop, and I took Tony when he was 18, 19 years old. And we went to that meeting, and my wife looked at me like I was crazy. You're going to give up your only day to go listen to this automotive guy speak. And that was the change. I mean, I started getting with a group of great automobile service center people, and we started growing from there. But that was my change. And I was broke, probably on the verge of bankruptcy at that point in time. And it was 07, 08, the recession, the Great Recession, as we call it now. But that was the change in my life and my business life.
Many people have come on the podcast and have shared that so transparent like you did, and those life-changing moments. And I hope that sticks to a lot of people's mind, that you almost need to make a big, bold move in order to get where you want to go.
Well, think of this as we get a little older, you start looking back and stuff. But do you want to end up on your tombstone, Mr. Shop Owner, or here lies Mr. or Mrs. Average? I don't want that. I want to have an impact on what we do, and we've done it within. We do a lot of leadership training within our shop with our team. With one of our young technicians came up and was due for a raise and some growth, and we worked out a plan. And I said, "What's one of your goals?" He said, "I want to be able to buy my first house, and I need to save down payment." We worked out a program where we took part of his pay, and I didn't take it myself, but I set him up with a financial guy where he could take out money every week. And at the end of a year, he'll have $7,000, $8,000 that he could put down on a house. Those are impactful things and leadership things that I think we as shop owners, I didn't used to do that. And I don't think many shop owners today do, but take part in somebody's life that works for you. And man, when you do, you want to talk about glue to your team. It really makes a huge difference.
Wow. Great. We've heard those stories before, but to hear it, from the horse's mouth, great stuff, Mike. Thanks. Here's a Maxwell quote. Teamwork makes the dream work, but a vision becomes a nightmare when the leader has a big dream and a bad team. So does it start with team building? Obviously, your own self as a leader. And then do you take that then to your team?
That's a really great saying and something to go back on. And I'm big on those types of things, and they always resonate, pop into my head. And one of the things I think when I started this transformation was before we can grow I got to grow me. And that was and I had to change first. So for shop owners that are out there that are struggling, it starts with you. It starts with your growth first before you can start building that team. Then I can start putting these other pieces. We have shop meetings all the time, once a week. 5-10 minutes is on technical stuff, and 40-50 minutes is on leadership and on thinking outside of the box and changing that mindset. I just spoke to a shop owner this morning, and we were talking about that, and I told him it takes time to change that culture within your team. It's not a snap over the night. Overnight success with that, because it takes time, and it takes you changing. It takes me changing, the way I dressed when I went to the shop. It was a whole change. I wore a technician uniform, even though I wasn't a technician, for many, many years. And it took changing that and changing my mindset from the morning I put on a pair of black dress pants and a businessman shirt versus a uniform.
I'll never forget a story from Doug Callahan. He said, in order for me to change how I worked inside my business, I had to put a dress shirt and a tie on every day, so I didn't pull myself into the shop into a role that I was so comfortable doing.
Yeah, and it's the same way. I mean, I've told the story many times. A lot of you shop owners come from the technician side. I really came from the sales side. So sales was my cup of tea and stuff. So as you shop owners run back in and want to work on a car, I want to go fix sales. And I had to change out of that polo shirt that had the logo and said Service Advisor Mike on it and all that stuff and be the leader that the shop so desperately needed. That was really what it came to.
Great story. I love it. It goes back to that consistency statement you said earlier. If you were going to have company meetings and you were going to build the team and impart a leadership culture inside the business, don't give up on it. Be consistent.
That's very true. It's one of the things, and it starts with weekly meetings. You've got to gather that team and we used to have meetings when the owner had something to complain about. That was they were not positive meetings. They were complaint sessions. We'll say it the nice way. And we had to change that. So we had to bring different things into our meetings and in different ways. And now we reward for training everybody in our organization from a porter service, general service to a technician to a salespeople are all required to have 40 hours of continual education each and every year, and we reward for that. We have a Thanksgiving dinner the Monday before Thanksgiving, and we hand out bonus checks. I handed out biggest one I handed out last year was $1,100. And I put in a lot of extra time on training and growth. So, but that starts with the leadership. When we go away to conferences and come back and they think you're out there sunning yourself in beautiful Florida or California, I have to remind them that I spent 16 hours this weekend in a classroom. So,
you just brought up a memory for me. I was like you. I'd always attend conferences, always go out. And the funny thing was, oh no, Carm's going away. because the problem is when he comes back.
Oh yeah, he's full of all these new ideas, and
we're going to change. Oh my God, we're going to have a meeting. We're going to have to talk about what he learned. We're going to have to, and you know what? I actually think they loved the idea that I was moving the business forward. And even though it was a joke, here we go, we're going to change again.
That's a great point too. And I think you have to share that with your team, and you have to share with your team, this organization needs to be profitable to be able to buy that new equipment, to be able to remodel this shop, invest in new hoists, put the technology in, and where it really comes from. I remember one of my technicians told me years and years ago, he said, my check's not going to be very good next Friday. And I looked at him, I said, mine's not either. And he took a few seconds and he kind of pulled back from me and he said, man, I never really thought of it that way. And so to explain to your team that I've got bills just like you do, with maybe a couple extra zeros on the end of them, but it's the same thing going. And so many times we're afraid as owners, we can't share that because they don't understand. We have to explain to them, how the process works, and really how very little. One of the guys that I coach with does $1 bill and he tears it in, 30%, and then it's down to, 10, 20%. This little sliver is what's left over for the owner at the end of the day. It's a great analogy.
Let me share this great story with you. Hopefully it'll take less than a minute. I used to do this. I used to do a seminar called Profitability for Dummies, and I took an entire P&L and I tore it apart by the percentages of sales that every component was, every expense component was. And what I did is I actually took the money that equated to a $100 bill, if you will, and if salaries are, for example, were 30%, there'd be $30 in an envelope under a chair in the seminar room. And I would always put the envelopes in the first row so the people who sat up front got rewarded. And we went, and so I asked everyone to, go under their chair, see if they found an envelope, and the envelope would have a code on it, and it would match the code of the P&L. I ended up giving $100 away during that seminar and put it in people's hands. And the person who had, the highest cost, I think, at that time for us was payroll. We always say, Bobby's buying drinks at the bar because, he had the most money. And then part of the big piece, the big takeaway was, we want to buy new equipment, we want to expand, and we want to give raises. Do you know where that comes from? And you just said it earlier, it comes from net operating profits. So, once we filter this P&L down to the couple of dollars that are ending up being on the P&L for the company, we've got to do things with it. And the more there's the more there's, in that net profit line, the more we can do.
Those are great pieces and stuff. And we've recently went through a major shop renovation where we have, one of the nicest independent service centers in our area. And the guys that have been with my team were able to experience that and see that change and growth. And now we can, new people on our team, we can talk about that and talk about, what we've worked together to do. And it's so again, let your people be part of this team. Let them in on the insights of things. And there's nothing to hide with that. I mean, it's great to be transparent.
Hey, I so enjoy this. I have one final question. Now, when you're having these team meetings and you're changing your business culture and you're bringing this entire leadership, I guess the word is culture, to your business, are you going to find some people just won't be on the team in a bit?
100%. I was just talking with a shop manager a little bit ago, and we talked about this. And it came from an old basketball coach that was a tyrant when he coached and stuff. They asked him about team rules. And he said, I don't have any team rules. And they said, what? You're one of the most difficult guys to play with for blah, blah, blah. He said, I don't have team rules because he said, every guy on my team is different and it takes a difference. So climbing down this guy's throat and getting him to perform works. It wouldn't work for Daryl over here. I have to go about that differently. And I was explaining that to the shop manager because he has a technician that's old school and just is having some struggles that are commonplace in that. And we talked about different ways to lead that team, and the difference between the word lead and manage. Two totally different words. Too many times we try to mix those together. And leadership, is not management, or management is not leadership. Let's put it this way. So, and getting the last piece I'll throw in this is for all of us to grow, we must let our present and future be totally separate from our past. It's a hard thing to let go of, but it's got to be separate. What happened yesterday, it's over. I don't care if you're the 63-year-old shop owner, that's been in it a lot of years and stuff. That it's over with. Start today and move it forward.
Put the old karm on the shelf.
Yes, I've definitely been several different Mike Tatiches in my 30-some years of owning TMT Automotive.
Yeah, me too. Another great story comes to mind. Susie Welsh, Jack Welsh's wife. He was the former chairman of GE. I saw her speak, and it was at a Maxwell conference, one of those live satellite feeds that I went to years ago. And she got up and she told a story about change, and she went to a high school reunion. Maybe it was her 25th year. Someone came up to her and say, "Wow, Susie, you've changed." And she said back to the person, "Thank God." So we'll leave the audience with that. Hey, will you come back and do some series on leadership for us?
Oh, I'd love to do that. I would love to share. There's so many ways that we can bring John Maxwell and there's a lot of other great leaders out there. I chose the Maxwell path because I believe strongly in that, and it's a great footprint. If anybody wants to know more about that, I'd love to share with anybody. But there's so many things that we can bring to this automotive industry that will help up-level us as a whole, as a team. And I'd help out in any way.
Can we put your email in your show notes page?
Sure. Yep. You're more than happy to.
Thank you. Mike Tatich, TMT Complete Auto Center, Bremen, Indiana. Thanks for being here, man.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike Tatich, for contributing to all aftermarket professionals who understand that we're all perpetual students. And thanks for bringing the focus of leadership to your coaching efforts. The key talking points can be found at remarkableresults.biz/E367. Hey, please don't forget to check out the new books page on the website. And don't forget, write to me. I love to hear from you. karm@remarkableresults.biz. We'll talk soon.
Thanks for being on board to listen and learn from the premier automotive aftermarket podcast. Until next time.